welcome to another episode of Booked, a place to explore the realms of creativity. Today's guest is L Cyrus Whelchel. Thank you so much for joining me today. How are you doing?
I'm doing great. How are you?
I'm really good, thank you. This has been months in the making, but we finally got here. I'm so pleased and excited to talk to you.
Same.
It's quite early where you are, and thank you so much for getting up to talk to me. I don't know that I would have gotten up that early.
I had to get up early anyway, so we're good.
Oh, good. Okay, I don't feel quite so bad now. So, for the benefit of our listeners that may not have heard of you before, could you introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about what to expect from your writing?
All right, so my name's L Cyrus Whelchel. I typically go by Cyrus, which is my middle name.
Mm-hmm.
And typically I tend to write high fantasy in a variety of subgenres. So as far as my work goes, I have like epic fantasy, quest fantasy, cozy mystery that I'm querying right now. In the future, I'll be doing a kind of a noble dark trilogy in the future.
Excellent. So you kind of got that core, it's core rooted in fantasy, but you kind of venture off into little sort of subgenres along with it.
Yeah, I have a very overactive imagination, so oftentimes I'll get inspiration and realize I need to write a book about that.
Does that happen to you at least once a week?
Almost. And then I'm just sitting there like, hold up, back up. I need to get through the back burner that I have right now. But it's going on the list.
Do you know what that is? That is half the problem, is the hoarding of stories, isn't it? It's like, we're like story dragons, and we're kind of sitting on this like pile of unfinished work.
You're not wrong. And the funny thing is, like, sometimes I'll go onto Instagram and just look through some writing prompt accounts that I follow, and I'll see something that just sticks out to me, and I'm like, that needs to be a book.
Is it when you see that and you think that, do you think, oh good, another story, or do you think, oh, another story to plague me?
I'm just sitting there like, well, at least I'll be kept busy.
This is true, and that's the beauty of having a super active imagination, because I'm very similar. I don't know about you, my brain is constantly going. I can't stop it. Even if I wanted to, I couldn't get it to stop.
Trust me, my brain has two settings: sleeping and what the hell is that?
I find it really hard to prioritize things because I want to do everything all at once.
Yeah.
So how do you prioritize stuff? Do you just kind of write what you feel like writing, or?
As far as my current projects go, I try to get into a set schedule. I haven't been able to write anything for the last month and a half just because of the hectic stuff that's going on with my move. But I'm hoping that I can start getting back into that schedule soon and actually focusing on getting my stuff done, because I do have the finale of my current trilogy that I'm a little over halfway done with now. I'm getting pretty close to the climactic final battle.
Excellent.
And then my standalone quest fantasy that I've been working on for the past year and a half, 2 years, is like 3 chapters away from being done with the first draft.
Oh, wow. So you're kind of nearing the finish line on a couple of things.
Yeah.
Cool. So do you like to sort of finish things before you start like another big thing, or do you kind of go where your creativity takes you?
Most of the time I kind of go where my creativity takes me, but at the same time I do try to focus on the big stuff that I want to get finished. Because like one of the things that I'm doing is that Noble Dark series that I mentioned. I'm actually working on a kind of a prequel novella for it to kind of give people a teaser of like what to expect with it. Because it's a lot darker than anything I've written before. So
Interesting. What's made you go sort of down that rabbit hole?
Actually, the main inspiration for uh, that particular trilogy is
Mhm.
one of my favorite video games. You'll find that there's a lot of video game inspiration in my work.
Well, you've got to tell me what the video game is.
Yeah, the it's a bit of a cult classic from the PlayStation 1. It's called Legend of Legaia.
I've not heard of it. Tell what is it? Is it like an RPG?
Yeah, it's a Japanese RPG.
Hmm.
It actually is very unique among RPGs because the combat system actually blends a turn-based system with
Hmm.
like uh, fighting game elements.
Oh, cool.
So it's a little unique in that regard, but the storyline is like one of the best in the PS1 era.
Hmm. Interesting.
Because basically the whole premise is that like the whole world is basically like overrun by this evil mist that turns creatures into berserk monsters that
Hmm.
attack humans. And pretty much almost the entire human race has been wiped out except for like scattered settlements.
Hmm. Okay. So it's got like a dystopian sort of
Yeah, it's
thing.
very dystopian.
So is that the kind of darkness that you've put into this work that is
Pretty much. Yeah,
okay?
it runs off of a similar premise.
Hmm.
So people who have actually like played the game or know of it will definitely see the similarities.
Yeah. Okay. Interesting. Cool. So, so it's still rooted in fantasy, but
Hmm.
has these darker elements. It's interesting. Has that been hard for you to do, or has it been interesting to sort of explore something that is a little bit darker?
It's actually been interesting. Like I tend to not read too much dark stuff, but I do
Mm.
dabble in it at times.
Mm.
So actually having to write it is a little bit uh it'll be a little bit of a challenge, but I think I'm prepared for it.
Has there been anything that has challenged you in writing something more dark that you've actually struggled with, or is it just something that you're like, okay, this is different. I feel a bit uncomfortable, but I'm going to keep going with it.
I feel like for me the biggest challenge is kind of like ramping up the tension
Mm.
and maintaining it.
Yeah, I can
So that's
see
just
that.
something I need to work on.
Hmm. It's definitely good to flex your muscles with things like that because something that I personally like as a reader is to feel like I'm in the book, I'm in the story, and if it doesn't make me feel something like uncomfortable or sad or happy or whatever it is, then I kind of struggle to enjoy it a bit. So I think it's definitely good for all writers to take themselves out of their regular sort of comfort zone to experiment with different things because then that lets you enhance the thing that you're already doing. So you can kind of add, as you're saying, specifically with the atmosphere, is add that atmospheric change in
Yeah.
less dark stuff and it'll help you to develop anyway. So that's very, very cool.
Hmm.
So do you primarily read fantasy books, like cozy fantasy things?
Yeah, primarily. Like I read a lot of cozy fantasy,
Mm-hmm.
a lot of epic fantasy.
Mm-hmm.
So like Tolkien and Sanderson are like some big influences on me.
That makes sense.
Yeah,
So, what is it about fantasy and cozy fantasy that you like to read the most?
I like that it gives me a chance to like escape from the doldrums of the real world.
Mm.
It actually like makes my mind work harder to kind of imagine like these brilliant worlds that these writers have created.
So it's like the escapism of it.
Yeah.
Yeah, I hear that from a lot of people that like fantasy because I pretty much say this in every episode because I deeply respect fantasy as a genre, deeply respect it because I can't keep track of what I'm doing and I've only got like one character in my novel.
I guarantee you, like half the time when I'm writing something, it's like a continuation.
Uh,
So like if I'm writing something on like the finale of my trilogy, I will
mhm.
go back and read the other two books. And it's not just because like for funsies, it's like I forgot what I wrote.
That makes me feel a little bit better. It
I've got
does.
to I have to verify that my ducks are all in a row. Otherwise, there's going to be a plot hole that someone is going to pick up on.
There will always be someone that picks up on a plot hole. So do you try and remember a lot of it?
I do try to remember a lot of it.
Okay. Do you have like a system that you use? Do you have like a notepad that you write stuff in?
I
How do you keep track of everything?
I have a series of files that are organized on my Google Drive.
Hmm.
That is very helpful in like keeping everything organized. I've got a lot of my world building stuff kind of like tucked away in there.
Yeah, because you do a lot of world building, right? I've seen that you've got maps and you've got character art of different races within your world. So
Hmm.
that's very exciting. Like you're actually creating a proper little universe. Not little, it's massive. Do you enjoy that as much as you do the actual writing of the story?
If anything, the world building is more fun than the actual writing because it makes my mind like work to be like, okay,
Mm,
how does this all fit together?
interesting. That's very exciting. I'm so envious of people that write fantasy or things that have complex world building in it because I can't cope with it. I can't cope with reading it a lot of the time. I have to really be able to pay attention because I forget stuff when it's not familiar to me. I can't like
Hmm.
hang on to it. So I have to read it about 3 times and the 600-page book turns into like 1200-page book. Yeah, that's math. That's twice, isn't it? 1200-page book because I've had to read it twice.
Yep.
So with your I've got a couple of questions about world building because it's
Yeah.
so alien to me in terms of like what actually goes into it. So let's say you're like, okay, I'm writing about this town, for example,
Yeah.
or this country or whatever the place is. How do you get from thinking about it to actually having a map? Because that's to me, I can't get my head around how any human could put those two as two tangible things together.
So sometimes I feel like where I start out with is kind of like an idea. So like one thing you'll hear real estate people talk about a lot is location, location, location. So I kind of try to think about where this particular town is located.
Okay.
And once I have the location down, I kind of go from there. So it's like, okay, is this a port town? If so, what all is going to be involved in that?
Mm.
Is it a river port? Is it a seaport?
Mm-hmm.
So like a lot of that is like kind of geared towards just trying to figure out the structure of the town,
Okay.
kind of figuring out what its purpose is. So like in my first book of the Fallen War Chronicles trilogy,
Mm-hmm.
one of the major towns that they go to is both a seaport and a river port because it's actually built at the base of one of the major rivers.
Okay.
So they actually have a thriving seaport that they use, but a lot of their uh, like fish and stuff
Mm.
that normally comes from the river that they go that they send the little river boats down.
Okay.
But in the book, they have the access to the river is cut off because of the rebel army closing in on them. And one of the things that the characters notice is that a lot of the fish that are in the market
Mm.
is stuff from the ocean rather than the river.
That's such minute detail that I would never have considered.
Yeah, so like there's a lot that goes into like building a town, especially if you're going to be spending a relatively decent amount of time in it in the
Mm.
story. So you
Okay.
kind of have to think about some of those little minute details
Mm.
and kind of like really dig into it. Like my cozy mystery series,
Mhm.
a lot of the books basically take place in just one town, so you really get to know that town.
Okay. So do you like sketch out where everything is so that you can see like okay, well that's the bakery and that's where the bank is or whatever it is. Does it help you to
Yeah,
have like
like
visual
I'll
cues?
put a lot of the major I'll mark a lot of the major landmarks
Okay.
on the maps, and I usually use like map generators to help me kind of like get a better idea
Mm.
of what the town looks like, and then make adjustments from there.
Okay. That makes sense. Do you find it helpful to have that visual to keep track of where everybody is?
Yes, it definitely does help, especially in my cozy mystery, where sometimes I have to remind myself, okay, what part of town is this in?
Mm.
and where these characters going and why.
Okay. So is that something that is important to you, as a writer and also a reader, like to understand how you can actually sort of put yourself into the shoes of that character and actually be sort of present walking down that cobblestone road or whatever it is that they're experiencing?
Yeah, like I feel like one of the best things about being a writer is being able to visualize like what you're writing about and
Mm,
see it from the character's eyes.
mm. I can see that. I mean, it's especially important in fantasy because you're asking the reader to really kind of conceptualize what it might look like in their head. And if you don't
Yeah,
give them quite a lot of information, then it could literally be anything. And then all of a sudden your book isn't the thing that you wrote, if that makes sense. So I suppose you have to
yeah,
give that depth of description and
yeah. Like a lot of people like bash fantasy for being like very wordy and stuff, but it's like you have to be,
yeah, it's
especially,
imaginary.
especially if it's a world completely different from Earth. So like
Mm,
urban fantasy and stuff, you can kind of like make some lenient
mm,
decisions as far as the world building goes. But when you're something like what I do
mm,
and it's a completely different world, you have to be descriptive.
yeah.
Otherwise, they're just not going to get it. They're going to imagine it as if it were Earth.
I think that's where a lot of people do struggle with. That's why I struggle with fantasy. I think because I've got such an active imagination, such as you, but I don't like being told what to imagine, if that makes sense. And
Yeah,
so if it's not something that I can directly relate to, I find it really challenging to like force myself to imagine that thing that I've never experienced before. It's funny. But I can totally understand why they're so popular and why people enjoy them so much because they are amazing. Like they're complex and interesting, and I just get very fatigued when I'm reading
yeah.
longer
Like,
books.
like I recently heard another author like comment on that actually, where like they were talking about how a lot of people just kind of are like, I don't want to hear like a huge description of these characters, and it's like
Mm,
if the character is like not human, you
mm,
kind of need the description to
yeah.
know what they look like. Otherwise, if it's a character that's got like wings or tails or something like that, you're going to
Mm.
be very confused when that particular body part starts moving around or gets mentioned, and you're like, where'd this come from?
No, you're so right. You're so right because I think it within the context of fantasy, where as you say things are not of the norm, it is important to really let that reader know what that thing is because you've created it. So they're not going to know what that is. So that's really, really
Exactly.
important. So important. That's not a word. Important. Oh my god. But I think if that's not your cup of tea, then you don't need to read it. You also don't need to
Exactly.
have a pop at people that enjoy it. There is a reason why Lord of the Rings was so popular because a lot of people really enjoyed it. And if you didn't,
Exactly.
you don't have to read it. Just watch the
Yeah.
film.
But then like it's also important like for people like me who don't use the standard
Mhm.
fantasy race fare. So
Yeah.
like you see a lot of like elves, dwarves, dragons,
Hmm.
stuff like that. I don't use any of that.
Yeah. So you've got your own like
Yeah.
complete original races, right?
Yeah, like all of the demi-human races that I have
Hmm.
are actually loosely based off of mythical creatures from various world mythologies.
Oh, that's interesting. Okay.
Yeah, so like I have races that are based off of creatures from Japanese mythology, Indian,
Hmm.
Greek, American.
America has mythology.
One of my races that hasn't even been mentioned yet is actually kind of based on like the Sasquatch slash Yeti.
Please tell me they're really hairy. Are they really hairy?
Yeah,
Oh, good. Because that's the only Sasquatch in my mind is like Harry and the Henderson style
yeah,
Sasquatch.
they're basically like the ape like race.
Gotcha.
But I haven't gotten to either of the continents that they're typically based out of.
Okay.
because they're typically found mostly on like the northern continent, which is more like the Yeti variant, and then the
Mm,
western continent, which is more of like a desert area. So that's more of like the Sasquatch
yeah.
variant.
I can see where your inspiration is coming from real life, but then you're elevating it to like, but what if it's this instead? Which is very
Exactly.
cool. Yeah. That's something I
Yeah,
love about fiction.
yeah, because like my races are based off stuff like Nekomata, Kitsune,
Mhm.
Selkies. So you've got some like Scottish slash Celtic mythology in there.
That's cool.
Harpies, the Naga,
Mhm.
Nereids from Greek mythology.
So if you're going to base things on, for example, a particular mythology, do you then do loads of research into that existing mythology and then do you kind of change it, or do you go, okay, I just need a visual, let me have a look at that and I can make it up from there?
I do a lot of research into like the actual base mythology, and some of
Mhm.
that actually makes it into the race's like backstory sometimes.
So how do you stop yourself from copy pasting an existing thing? I've always wondered that because I find it really hard.
I basically like adjust it to my own particular world,
Okay.
so it's a little bit different.
Hmm.
So like in Greek mythology, the harpies are typically just like the head and like torso of a human
Mm.
with like uh, just wings, but the Erivolk are typically like mostly human with wings that grow from the backs of their arms.
Oh, okay. Hmm. Like a fly suit or a
Yeah, kind
flying
of.
squirrel.
Yeah, and they can't truly fly
Hmm.
because of their larger size,
Hmm.
even though they're much lighter and shorter compared to the other races.
Hmm.
But they can glide long distances if they get a running start.
Okay. God, you think of everything. It's fascinating to me because like, I'm very slapdash as a writer, and by that I mean I'm just like go with the emotion and just run, just keep running until you feel another emotion. Whereas I can see that you're very much like, right, let me put you here, and I'm going to describe everything around you, and this is why. And you've got a lot of whys behind what you do. It's fascinating.
Because I feel like I have to think about those kinds of things because it's like, okay, this person has wings, but how can they fly if they're so big? Like,
Mm,
there's a reason ostriches and emus can't fly.
that'd be terrifying. Can you imagine? Ooh.
Like, same thing, same reason penguins can't fly.
That would be cute. I think I'd prefer it if
Well, I
penguins
think
could
penguins would
fly.
be cute.
That would be so cute. Although I don't know if they'd be as cute if they had bigger wings. I like that they've got those little stubby wings. I think
Oh
that's
yeah,
one of the things that makes them
I
cute.
love penguins because they just like waddle, and it looks so adorable.
Yeah, that if I was gonna be a bird, I think I'd want to be a penguin.
Well, the terrifying thing about being a penguin is having to worry about seals.
Oh yeah, maybe like a pet penguin. I've always thought if I could ever be an animal, I think I would probably want to be a golden retriever. I think that would be the thing because they're so gorgeous and their hair's amazing. So anyway, if you could be an animal, what would you be?
That's a good question. Like, normally I'm afraid of heights, but I feel like I probably would want to be like some kind of bird.
Hmm.
So maybe like a kestrel, like a little hawk.
Oh yeah, they're cool. They're
Like the
very
thing I
cool.
love about birds is like they're just so free. They can go wherever they want, and they don't have to worry about traffic to get there.
That's so true. I love that this modern day existence has made you think that you wanted to be a bird because of traffic. And also, they don't have thumbs, which means no social media, which is fine with me.
I mean, you're not wrong. I couldn't imagine the trouble birds would get into if they had opposable thumbs.
They'd be awful. I feel like they're the cats of the sky. Like, birds are graceful, they're gorgeous, but I do feel like they'd probably be assholes.
Certain birds, definitely. I feel like
Mm.
eagles would probably be jerks.
They definitely, like, definite jerks. They've got jerk energy because they're so cool. They're like,
Pigeons, too.
yeah, I feel like pigeons would be more like that, I don't know, like an annoying cousin or
It's like
something.
that one annoying uncle that shows up to the family reunions that no one really wants to talk about.
Yes, yes, that uncle. Yes, absolutely. Pigeons are the creepy uncle of the bird world. This got so off topic. I'm so pleased. So when you're creating things and you're telling people the whys and the giving them a background explanation of like, okay, so this thing can't fly because of this, but it can glide, for example. Are those the kind
Mhm.
of questions that you want to know as a reader when you're enjoying fantasy?
Sometimes I can really like, kind of just get engrossed in it.
Mm-hmm.
But if something like really stands out, like I sometimes will have OCD when I'm reading, so like my mind will pick up on things that are like, why does this not make sense?
Mm.
And that will just bug me until I figure it out.
What happens when you can never figure it out?
Then I'm just gonna be like, I don't know if I can finish this. Like, I will try to finish it, but that question is going to be plaguing me for the rest of the time I'm reading this.
Have you thought about reaching out to the authors and being like, what the hell is this?
I mean, I could, but I doubt they would respond.
Yeah, probably. That's the beauty of talking to like self-published authors and authors who are more accessible in that way, because you could be like,
Yeah.
hello, I read this thing and this doesn't make sense, can you help me? And most of the time, if you're nice, people will respond.
Yeah. If anyone has questions about my stuff, they're more than welcome to ask, and I can try to explain it as best I can.
That's lovely. Do you hear that, world? There you go. You've got a encyclopedia of knowledge of these books that you can access at any time. Well, not any time. Maybe not at like 2 in the morning because you'll be asleep. But
I mean, at that point, I'm just gonna be like, somebody better be dying, because
yes, I don't understand the specific plot point, and you'll be like, somebody is dying. Their imagination's dying.
clearly.
Because I read really late at night. That's the only time where my brain is quiet enough for me to enjoy something, and I do find
Mhm.
myself at like 1 o'clock in the morning thinking, I really want to. I want to email the author because I don't get this bit.
I mean, you're welcome to email me if you have questions, but just be aware that if you email me late at night, I'm probably not going to get to it till the morning.
I think that's perfectly fair. You need to keep office hours if you're going to offer up a service like that. Monday to Friday, 8 till 4, or
Yeah,
9 till 3.
it's like professor's office hours.
Maybe we'll put your office hours in the description of the episode. Need to put an out of office on. If this is about a plot point, please bear with me for the next 48 hours. So I know that you're currently querying. Oh, guest appearance.
Yep. The writing assistant has made her appearance.
I know that you're currently querying. Did you say it was a cozy No, a cozy mystery?
Yeah, it's a cozy mystery
Okay.
/ fantasy.
Okay, I was almost right.
Yeah, yeah. It's very much Kiki's Delivery Service meets Legends and Lattes.
Okay, excellent. So, how long have you been querying it?
Several months now, and I think I'm gonna have to send out a new batch of queries because I feel like every single one that I've sent out so far has basically been nope, 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 all form rejections. So admittedly, it is a little like frustrating, but
Mm.
this this one is like the start of a series.
Okay.
So like if you're aware of like Lillian Jackson Braun's The Cat Who series or like Janet Ivanovich's Stephanie Plum series,
Hmm.
it's kind of like in that vein.
Okay. But is it going to work as a standalone thing, or would you have to read the series to get it?
Like each one can work as a standalone,
Hmm.
uh, but at the same time though, like some of the characters you may have more of an idea like of their backstory and stuff if you
Mm.
read the series from the start.
That makes sense. Okay. So, in terms of the querying process, because I don't think I'm ever going to put myself through that because I can't deal with a rejection, to be honest. Um, what has been the most challenging part other than not hearing back from people about the querying process?
Actually putting together a sellable query letter.
Okay. So how did that process go for you? Did you have to do some research? Did you just sort of wing it? Is this the first time you've done one? That was a lot of questions.
Yeah,
I'm
this
sorry.
is the first time I've done one, so
Okay.
like I had to do a lot of research. I had to kind of look for examples
Hmm.
of successful ones and kind of like pick and choose like stuff that was kind of relevant to my particular work.
So does it vary from genre to genre in terms of like how you present the thing?
Yeah, it can because
Mm.
uh, different genres need to focus on like different things.
Mm.
So, like how you pitch a fantasy is going to be very different from how you pitch like a thriller or a romance.
I suppose is that because there are different like marketable properties of each genre, so you've got to be like it includes these sellable things that you might
Exactly,
like.
because you gotta
Okay.
you gotta focus on the marketable parts that will like appeal to readers of that genre.
Okay. Something that I've wondered about going through the traditional route. Let's say, for example, you get picked up by an agent. They say this is great, except we have to change this really, really key part of the plot, otherwise I can't sell it. How far do you think you would go to change your creative vision to have it traditionally published?
It depends. Like if
Mm.
it's something that is like it's just like a minor like plot thing to kind of make it more clear,
Mm.
then I can see myself wanting to okay, yeah, we can change this around a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
But if it's something that like goes into like the core vision of like what I'm trying to write about and the theme that I'm trying to present,
Mm-hmm.
I don't think I'd be able to do it
That's fair.
because like a lot of my work typically kind of looks at themes of like fighting against discrimination,
Mm-hmm.
learning to like get along with people despite our differences.
So I suppose if they were like, "Oh, you've got to change," let's say, for example, we don't like this particular character, but they're a main character, and they want you to completely change their identity, would that be difficult for you to change? Do you
Oh,
think?
that would be very difficult because a
Mm.
lot of the characters that I put into the stories, like if they're a main character, they
Mm.
have a purpose.
I mean, you put a lot of time and energy and love into it. I don't know what I would do.
Yeah, if they want me to like change a core character, like and
Mm.
completely change their identity, that might be tough for me to do.
I think when it comes down to it, when you're in that position, you probably might make a slightly different choice because it might be something that you've worked towards for 4 years. Let's say you get picked up and they're like, we really need you to change this core thing, but it's going to be huge. I do wonder if people might have a slightly different view because they're in a completely different position. But I'm sure you'll tell me when you get picked up. I'll
Yeah,
come back and ask you, and I'll say, okay, what's changed?
yeah. I feel like today's publishing world is a little bit like set against my stuff just because one, my stuff is a little niche
Okay.
in that and with how scattered my subgenres can be with my work.
Mm.
But then also the fact that nowadays a lot of what I'm seeing in traditional publishing is all that they want really is like LGBTQ
Mm.
related stuff. So like if it's not like a sapphic romance or
Mm.
something like that, oftentimes it's just like we can't sell it.
So is that something that you've noticed in terms of like what's hot right now is like sapphic romances? I've noticed a lot of romanticy stuff, and a lot of dark romance stuff.
Yeah,
I think that's the genre that I'm seeing a lot of. I don't read it a lot, so I don't like romance
yeah,
things. Full
yeah,
stop. So, mm, yeah, I think that is the tough one. Is that you could spend 10 years writing a book, but if you're querying at the time when that particular thing isn't marketable, then you might luck out. But then you might be querying long enough to see it come full circle and go somewhere else where
yeah.
they might want the sort of thing that you've got, and it must be so hard to know when to pull it off of the querying
Yeah,
trenches, out of the querying trenches. Yeah.
yeah, because like I think I'll probably wait until I finish drafting the second and or third book of the series before pulling this one off out of the querying trenches,
Okay.
because I've already got the outlines for books 2 and 3 of the Cozy series.
Why would that be the thing that you wait for? Is that so that if you do end up self-publishing, I'm not speaking it into life, I'm hoping that you get exactly what you want out of this experience, but if you were to self-publish it, would you prefer to be able to then publish the second and third ones in quick succession afterwards?
I would probably like do it like fairly soon, like maybe not like back to back to back,
Mm.
but I would at least like try to have enough of a gap to where people can read the first one and
Mm.
then like jump right into the second and third.
Yeah, I suppose it's better than stringing people along for 10 years.
Yep.
Yeah, interesting. Yeah, I think when I've spoken to people that are querying, I don't think I've met anyone that's enjoying the experience in any way, and it just puts me off a little bit. I think it just, I don't know. I'd be fearful that it would stop me from loving the book that I wrote.
Yeah. Like
Mm.
I still love the book that I wrote, but at the same time it's just like, okay, I get that it's not for everybody.
No books are going to be for everybody. And as
Yeah.
long as you are happy with what you have created, then that is literally the most important thing. Because you could have one person out of a million that reads it and loves it, and that's still a win because you wrote something and shared it that somebody could enjoy, and that's really cool. Like,
Yep.
there aren't a lot of people that have the ability to be able to do that, and that's a really, really cool one. So, yeah. Anyway, I truly hope that you get the result that you want, and it might
Yeah.
just be that you have to wait for the next trend cycle to come round, and then it'll be fine
Maybe.
again.
Or I could just end up lucking out with a one of those indie publishers that lets you submit like
Mm.
directly.
Oh yeah, that's true. There are tons of them as well, and please let me know if you need any info on those because I know lots now.
Yeah, I'll definitely reach out because I'm looking for a few publishers that might be interested in a cozy fantasy.
That one's being queried at the moment, and I know
Mhm.
that you've got a few works in progress. So, what sorts of things are you working on at the moment?
Yeah, so like the big one that I'm working on is the finale of my Fallen War Chronicles trilogy.
Okay.
As I said, I'm a little over halfway done with that one.
Hmm.
So that's like my big project that I would like to get published sometime at the, I would say probably sometime early next year.
Okay, cool.
Because I don't think I'm going to be able to get get the draft done and then get all the editing and cover done and all that
Mm,
before the end of the year,
yeah.
considering like how much of a hassle it is just for me to be able to write nowadays.
Oh, I feel you. Okay, so do you have anything else you're working on at the moment?
Yeah, like I said, I do have a standalone quest fantasy that I'm
Hmm.
working on. It's kind of like Atlantis: The Lost Empire, the Disney movie, kind of
Hmm.
meets Six of Crows.
I don't know what Six of Crows is.
It's a young adult series
Hmm.
by Bardugo, I think is
Okay.
the last name, but it's kind of like a heist fantasy in a
Mm,
sense. But uh, this one that I'm working on, the Garden of Lavote, basically a old mercenary basically works for like a essentially like a mafia boss.
okay. Oh, interesting.
He, and he doesn't like doing it because he absolutely despises the mafia boss, but he
Mm,
does it because he needs the money. And so he one of his core rules is that he doesn't take jobs involving children. But when the boss basically like tries to force him into a corner to doing so,
Mm-hmm.
he deliberately botches the job.
Oh, that's the classic move. Do it badly, and they'll never ask you to do it again.
Yeah, well, then what ends up happening, though, is that it sets off a chain of events
Mm-hmm.
that ends up with the mercenary being essentially blackmailed by the royal court because the mafia boss reacts in a way that kind of like causes a crisis in the country.
Mm-hmm.
So the royal court basically strong arms the mercenary into leading an expedition to go find a long lost garden that's supposed to have like very powerful medicines that can kind of help the country weather through the crisis.
Interesting. Sounds very exciting. Are you
Yeah,
expecting it to
and
be quite a long book?
uh, it's going to be about like in the 90 to 110K words range.
Quite long, not short.
No, like the average for fantasy is usually about 80 to 100K for standalones.
Yeah, they're very thick.
They are chonkers
They
for sure.
are. I'm very much looking forward to hearing about when you finally get your book deal.
Yeah,
I'm putting that out to the universe, and as soon as you
thank
get it,
you.
we'll have you back on, and then we'll talk about the process. It'd be amazing.
Yeah,
Um, so thank you so much for joining me today. It's been a pleasure. It's been really fun to get to know you as a writer, to get
thank
to know a
you.
bit more about your work, and to find out what kind of animal that you would be if you could choose. Before I let you go, where can our listeners find you and your work? Not your home address, just like
Yeah,
websites and stuff.
no, like I do have all of my stuff on my link tree, which you can find both at my Twitter slash
Mhm.
X and my Blue Sky accounts.
Perfect. I will put that link in the description of the episode. Also, put the link to your author feature on Indiosyncrasy as well. But yeah, thank you so much again for being here today, and it
Yeah,
was a pleasure.
yeah, thank you for having me.